Welcome, everyone. My name is Micah. I'm a QA automation engineer here at Indeed, and the title of my talk is Stretching Yourself with Hackathons.
Man on stage presents to an audience. Slides, Indeed. Stretching Yourself with Hackathons. Micah Barwick, Quality Assurance Automation Engineer, Indeed.
First, a little bit about me. I've been software testing for about 19 years or so.
Slide, Portrait.
I'm an avid learner. You'll even find me learning about learning. And one of the most important jobs I think I have is to be a dad. When my kids were much smaller, they were little guys, I would sometimes do kids yoga with them, right? And if you've never done this, absolutely try. It's a lot of fun. It could be kind of funny too. But I would always tell them to really try and stretch themselves, try to stretch.
A pug stretches.
If they did that, they would be taller. This might not be true. Physically speaking, at least, I don't think that's scientifically founded, but it's incentive for little kids who are small. You know, candy always works, but sometimes you want a healthier approach. So I'd like to share a story that illustrates this idea of stretching. It's a hackathon that I did last summer.
Slide, Agenda. Idea, confirming, hacking, sharing.
I'll share with you what the idea was behind the hackathon, a confirming phase where we had to feel out some certain things with the idea, the actual hackathon, and then how we started sharing. So, first, the idea. I was standing around one morning at our stand-up meeting where we basically talk about our what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, and anything that might be blocking us. Pretty standard software engineer practice. And one of the developers on our team had mentioned that he wanted to do something for Hackathon. How? And so Hal said something along the lines of, why don't we catalog our databases or look at our schemas and look at indexing something or another, something that sounded pretty doable to me. And so I nodded in agreement and said, sure, let's do that.
Slide, Hackathon, Summer 2019.
And so our hackathon here, by the way, it's typically 2 days, where on the second day we have a sharing of sorts where we show what we did is voluntary, and it can mean you can work on pretty much anything. Most things are job related, but they're always fun. And so this is where our dev manager, Chad, chimed in and said, well, if you're serious about Hackathon, I have an idea for you. He said, you know how our senior leadership has been talking about how we should focus on NPS.
Slide, Net Promoter Score. A row of 10 people. 6 are detractors, 2 are passives, 2 are promoters. NPS equals promoters minus detractors.
Now, NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. You might hear me say NPS score. I know it's redundant, but sometimes engineers need redundancy. And so basically, the Net Promoter Score reflects how happy our customers are with us. And it's based on this, all of our promoters subtracting the detractors, we want a good score. Any company will want to improve their NPS no matter how good it already is. But he continued and said, why not take everything we know about our systems and our customer data, and why don't we implement a machine learning model that would help us predict whether or not a customer might be one of those detractors before they even submit the survey.
Image, robot hands holds a crystal ball.
And so that was the idea. And it all took less than 3 minutes or so, this idea, but ideas are important enough that they have their own section in the story. And so I immediately go into what I call the confirming phase, because I had nodded along, but I did not nod along to that. And 2 days is, to me, not enough time to really tackle something like that. And we all looked at each other and thought, does anyone else here have experience with machine learning or doing any data science? And none of us really did, but we all had the attitude that, you know, why not look into it, and we should see if this is something we can do. So we actually knew a data scientist at Indeed. We scheduled an hour of his time, and we wanted to see just how reasonable this was. And in my mind, I thought, why don't we just hire a robot and teach the robot something, and then that's machine learning, right? I'm just kidding.
A robot writes mathematical equations on a chalkboard.
Actually, in that hour meeting that we had with the data scientist, we did ask him to join our team, but had already signed up for a hackathon.
Diagram, feature selection points to ML model, which points to a bar with a segment labeled train and a shorter segment labeled test.
He had given us a rundown of everything that might be important. And basically, he showed us that feature selection is one of those things that really will matter and how precise we can be. The feature selection basically is anything we decide to put into the machine learning model. And the more you put in there, the less accurate it's going to be. If you put in the day of the week and it being Wednesday doesn't matter, you're going to get clouded results, right? So we really had to be picky here. And we had to decide what is important to our customers. And that was one of the most important things we had to learn. We also had to put that into a machine learning model, and there are several to choose from. There are pros and cons to each, but we really had to make a choice and go with it. And then he told us that you will be training your machine learning model. This is the learning part of the algorithm. The remaining part is really, you need to have a portion that is for testing to make sure that it is accurate. And so this is what we learned. And I think I confirmed that this was just a big stretch for me. And I think it was still a stretch for a lot of my team. None of us were thinking, this is totally, we're going to knock it out of the park. This was something that we all acknowledged, if anything, we'll learn something. And because, hey, it's Hackathon. And I think that's what encouraged us to go forward.
A man on a ladder in the sky reaches over to touch a star.
So we moved into what I call the hacking phase.
Slide, day 1.
We had, so as I said before, the hackathons are typically 2 days.
Image, a room with 2 large monitors and 4 people with computers at a desk.
On day 1, we basically sequestered ourselves off into a room. And we decided to do most things together. We looked at what might be important to our customers, why would they, and what features should we select to put into our algorithm. We looked at roughly where to get that data and perhaps how to do it, but we decided to do that first day all together. And I think it made it a lot more fun. And to me, it wasn't any more elegant than that. But in its own way, I find it to be a beautiful expression of innovation, is everyone together looking at the problems together and refining. And this is where I think my software testing came into play. You ask questions and you try to refine and you clarify. And that's where I think at least I contributed. So by the end of the first day, we decided we should have some homework. We had a few tasks we could actually implement. And with the agreement that on the next day, we would share all of our results.
Slide, day 2.
And so day 2 starts, and we had pretty good success from the night before. And we looked at everything that we needed to do on the second day. We knew that we had to set a goal for the end of day 2. And we knew what question we needed to have answered. Could we predict a customer's NPS score before they even take the survey?
Image, a classical figure with pink sunglasses.
And so I like to say, Eureka, we had found it. That's my main man, Archimedes. He first said Eureka. So we actually found that we had a really good, accurate prediction of whether or not one of our customers, depending on what data they had, would be a detractor or be a promoter. And so we were pretty excited, to say the least. We knew this was a stretch, but we actually confirmed and actually got it to work. And so here's where we start sharing this success. And we started...
A group of men pose for a picture.
This is day 2, the science fair for grown-ups, as I call it. And you can see Chris Himes, our CEO, in the middle there, giving us lots of support, and was pretty happy with what we did. There's yours truly at the bottom, and clockwise there's Dre, Hal, Jeffrey, and Chaitanya. And so This sharing started with other stakeholders. We started looking at who might be interested in this, and many people were interested in this. And we've turned this more or less into a product.
Slide, key takeaways. Culture sets the tone.
And this, I think, was, you know, what I had learned from this was culture really sets the tone. If you don't have space for this kind of thing, you'll always be bogged down with your everyday tasks and your project needs. I've never worked at a company that had a hackathon before like this, but I immediately see the value in having that.
Think like the customer.
I also learned, and I reaffirmed, that it's always good to think like your customer. We're a platform team, so we have direct, you know, value in our platform, our customers, but not necessarily a direct customer. So we really had to look at the whole picture and what does Indeed provide and what would make a customer happy. And so I think it was a good exercise that we went through when we were selecting those features.
Takes cues from leadership.
And then it's always good to take cues from leadership. Not only was this something from senior leadership that said, hey, you should look at this, but our dev manager, Chad, said, here's a challenge. He gave us a goal that was just out of reach, and we stretched and met it. And so I think it's important to listen to what's important, and then also challenge yourself to actually try and meet that.
Stretching does make you taller.
And then I believe stretching does make you taller. And see, kids, I was not lying. We are not taller physically, but together as a team, there have been several projects we've worked on since then where we, in fact, I think we feel taller, and we've delivered ahead of time or delivered on time some other tasks where we had to drop what our immediate role was, and we actually came together and delivered it as if it was the hackathon. We just dropped what we're supposed to do and just come together and do it. And I think a lot of it has to do with this too. So, does anybody have any questions?
Slide, questions.
All right, that's Micah Barr. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.